Hi, I'm Allie Hamilton, and I'm so happy to welcome you to the Come As You Are podcast. Every week, we'll be talking about some aspect of healing, usually around childhood wounds and complicated familial relationships. The topics will always coincide with my personal essay of the week, and this will be a place where we can take a deep dive together. I'm so thrilled you've joined me and delighted for you to always come as you are. Hi there. Welcome to our talk. Today, the topic is Hooters and Balls. That was the title of my essay, and I never thought I would write an essay with that title, but I never thought a lot of things would happen. So here we are. Preposterous feels like appropriate in this moment. And I was writing about what it is like to be a woman generally, and particularly in this country right now. And part of why some of these things were on my mind is I had a mammogram on Tuesday, and I think I've had probably 12 mammograms at this point. I turned 54 a couple weeks ago. So pretty sure I started getting mammograms when I was 40. I feel like that's right. And so I've had about a dozen at this point. And I have a history. My maternal grandmother died of breast cancer. My mother would never get a mammogram. And I had a few benign tumors removed in my 20s from my breast, two in one side and one in the other. Obviously didn't know they were benign until they came out at the time. But I have dense breast tissue. And because of the familial history, it's something I really have to be vigilant about. And also because my mother would not get a mammogram, I didn't have that. There's like a gap in the information in the family history there. And I think for her, it's just too scary. Maybe my mother was somebody who tended to avoid the scary things. So as much as I used to beg her to get a mammogram, she just would not do that, which is really unfortunate because I'll never know, if there was anything there. And so then my daughter has a gap in her family history as well. But I did finally get tested for the gene. I was a little bit scared to do that, but I did go ahead and do that. I don't have it. But it's still something you have to be on top of. You can do everything right. You can do your self checks. You can get your mammograms. You can not have the breast cancer gene and you can still get it. So, I do really try to stay on top of that. So I went and got a mammogram, and I went after I had met with my accountant. It was really like just a bang up day. I was like, wow, can I do more not fun things in one day? And so mammograms are not, and I want to be really careful about this because I think some women are really scared of them, especially if they haven't had one. And so I want you to know that they're really not painful. That's my estimation. Obviously, these things are subjective, but I do not consider them painful. They're not fun. It's not like a fun way to go and spend some time. There is discomfort, no doubt, but it's not pain. This particular mammography technologist was not gentle. I don't know how else to I don't know how else to describe it. So of all the mammograms I've ever gotten, this was by far like the most uncomfortable, kind of like breathtakingly so. And so it got my, wheels spinning. And I had said in the essay that it was sort of like getting a mammogram with, Nurse Ratched. Like, some of you are too young to know the One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest reference. Now you know. it just was one of those things where I was like, wow, there is a way to do this that, kind of mitigates the discomfort. And then there's whatever's happening right now in this situation. And yeah, there's no mitigation happening. This is incredibly like, whew. So it just got me thinking about what it is like to be a woman generally, because there are things that we're all doing all the time that are just part of living in a body that, bleeds and cramps once a month for about a week, starting from the time you are somewhere between, like, these days it's gotten younger over the last several decades, somewhere between 10 and 14. For me, I was 14 when I got my period for the first time. I'm going to talk very openly about this stuff, so get ready. And stops sometime around, like, you could be in your 30s, 40s, 50s. My mother was 62 when she stopped getting her period. So, and 30s would be early. Some women go into early menopause, so there's a lot of leeway there, and there's no formula for this stuff. And sometimes people, as with anything in life, they project and assume, right? They assume like how it is for them is like how it is for everyone. And that's such a dangerous game to play generally. Sometimes, like, if a woman has like not a big deal kind of cycle, like her period's not a big deal, she doesn't get major PMS symptoms, she doesn't get a lot of cramps, then for her, if the thinking is, well, period's not a big deal, well, it's not a big deal for you, but for somebody else it might be. By and large, I was not someone who had a big problem. Like, I just kind of not a big deal. I just kind of go through, have my period, not a big deal. But that doesn't mean it's fun. It's just I'm used to it. So growing up with a body that is going through this major process, once a month, and then you hit those years where maybe you're sexually active and you're trying to figure out how do I not get pregnant if I'm sexually active, right? Then that becomes like this major conversation, and it is largely falling on the girl or the woman to figure that out. Not that, hopefully there's a conversation happening with the partner, but we all understand if something goes wrong, who's the one that's going to be dealing with the ramifications of that in a much more profound way. And then there's maybe the point in time where somebody wants to get pregnant. And then there's like, if you do get pregnant, there's just so many, aspects to living in a body that can potentially grow human beings. Now, sometimes it doesn't, sometimes you're living in a body and there are women that desperately want to have babies and can't. There's infertility, right? There are women who have babies and lose them and have to somehow go on. There are women who grow babies and push them out into the world. Like, all aspects of this situation are not easy. And that's what I was writing about, because, and I'll get to why, part of it was the mammogram, because then there's all the medical testing and medical research that's been done, and it's been very skewed toward men. There's been way more funding in medical research spent on men's health issues than women's. And so sometimes when you're facing something as a woman, like endometriosis or perimenopause, or trying to figure out what's happening in your own body, there's like a dearth of information. And then for a very long time, even as I was a kid, growing up, there's this shame about it. There's this shame about your period. You don't talk about that. Like, you're bleeding. Ooh, like, hide that. It's like, why? None of us would be walking around if that process wasn't happening. Like, that's how the human race exists. So what is the shame? So for a long time, this wasn't even a conversation that was in the mainstream. It was like, people wouldn't even ask their partners. If a woman, if a girl or a woman had a male, had a boyfriend, they didn't want to ask, hey, can you pick up tampons for me? Are you kidding me? Like, really? Like, that really just shouldn't be a thing, but it certainly was. Even today, sometimes, like, women feel uncomfortable asking their friends for like a tampon at the table or something quietly, and then they feel like they gotta hide the tampon on the way to the bathroom. It's like there's still this shame around this whole thing of just existing as a woman in this world. And so I was writing about that, and I was writing about what it is like, because right now I'm in perimenopause, which is this fun sarcasm font, part of the event where you are like, I don't know what's going to happen. Like, sometimes I get my period and sometimes I don't. And sometimes I will get it and then, like, I'll get it again the following week. Like, I didn't just have it. And sometimes I'll skip it for a month. And sometimes I'll get it for like a day or 2 days. It's like, you just don't know. You have no idea what's going to happen. And if you get like hormone induced migraines, then you get to figure out that chaos, So it's not easy. It's not easy. And I was also talking about the experience of growing a person in your body, which not everyone does. Not everybody chooses to do that. Not all women want to have children, right? Which is a totally legitimate decision to make. And I applaud it. Like, if you are someone who's like, that is not for me, good for you for knowing that, because it is really hard. It's really hard. And if you're not sure that you want to do it, definitely don't do it. Don't do it, because it's going to take everything you've got, and better for children to be growing up in an environment with somebody who was like, absolutely all in on it, right? Like, I'm so grateful that by the time I had my kids, I was 36 when I had my son and 39 when I had my daughter. And I was like, I was so ready. I had, done a lot of work figuring out my own stuff. I knew that I wanted children as I was growing up. I think that I had such a desire to try to create a happy family and to at least have the experience of giving to my own children the kind of security and unconditional love and support and joy and like gratitude and just, all these things that my parents just were not in a position to give me when I showed up in their timeline, and I think we can it's really good to remember that when you are born, you're showing up in someone else's story, to someone else's stories. And they've had this whole timeline going on before you got there. And they've got whatever tools they have, right, emotionally and mentally available to them. They have whatever financial situation they're in. They have there's a whole bunch of stuff that goes into it. They have their own family histories that are coming into the equation. So much of what happens when we are little and as we're growing up, it can feel so personal, but it really isn't. It's really a reflection of these two people and where they were on their own paths when you showed up. Now, I understand that's not always so easy to kind of pull yourself out of the story and think about it that way. But when you can, it sometimes takes the sting out of anything that did or didn't happen that you wish had or hadn't happened. So, I can look back on that stuff now, and really, I have a lot of compassion for my mother now that I'm a grown woman and I've been through some things. I can look back and see she was 24 when she had me, and a lot of trauma in her background that she did not get any help with. And there's just a lot of stuff there. And I have a little less compassion for my dad because he was 45 when he had me. And, he had a lot of opportunity to grow that he did not take, opportunity for self reflection. But I think he was on the narcissism spectrum. So, sometimes people just don't do that kind of work and don't look at the wake of destruction they're leaving in their path. Okay. So when I got pregnant with my son, I was writing about pregnancy. And with my son, I had, what we would call a quote unquote, like easy pregnancy, meaning I really didn't have any morning sickness. I did not get pregnant easily. It took a year. I didn't write about that. I was doing all kinds of things. I've written about it before, but acupuncture and boiling the tea and peeing on sticks and taking my temperature, very sexy stuff. It took about a year, and I eventually went to a fertility doctor, and he put me on a round of Clomid. He was like, your estrogen levels are low, very common with like extremely active women. And I was pregnant 2 weeks later. And so I didn't write about that, but what I did write about is just the experience of after I was out of that first trimester where I was tired. That's about all I had with my son. There was some anxiety because obviously it had taken me a lot of time and effort to become pregnant. And I didn't want anything to happen. So there was fear and stress about that. Ended up doing Clomid and IUI and that activity. But once I was sort of cleared, it was pretty smooth sailing all the way until the end. I had pretty good energy once I hit the second trimester. I was writing about I led a yoga retreat on Maui, and you hiked the Haleakala crater at sunrise, and that's a 12-mile hike, and there's 3 miles of switchbacks at the end of that hike. I was feeling pretty great. And then the childbirth with my son, and again, I want to be really careful because I don't want to scare anyone who might be pregnant right now. But I had a whole birth plan that I had everyone sign off, my doctor, the nurses, the hospital, everybody signed my birth plan. Don't talk to me about drugs, no drugs. I want low lights, and I want to be able to play music and do yoga during my labor, and nothing went according to my plan. And so it was very, again, I don't want to, I'm very mindful that there might be somebody listening who's pregnant. So I will just say that we almost didn't make it. I'll just cut to that part. And that's not hyperbole. And I am very grateful that I had the doctor that I had in the room, years of experience, and actually has written books. She's amazing. And she, even the next day, when I spoke to her, she was just that was wow. Really did not expect that. And Sherry Ross, she's fabulous. And so, anything can happen is the point. You can be totally healthy. You can be having just a healthy, easy pregnancy. And then you have a childbirth that just even a doctor with decades of experience would not have seen coming, where both you and your baby, it's touch and go, Thankfully, we both made it. We're both fine. It's a happy ending to the story. But it was 24 hours of honestly, I'm lucky I'm sitting here talking to you. And, I'm incredibly grateful. My son made it, and he's well, and all is well. We had a good story, good ending to our story. But it's one of the reasons, just in talking to you, maybe you can hear, I am emotional because it could very easily not have gone that way. And that is one of the reasons that I am so enraged about the abortion bans, like these drastic, radical abortion bans in some of these states, like Texas, where it's only the life of the mother, you know, that's it. So if somebody's having a pregnancy related emergency, a miscarriage, like she might not get the best care possible because of these insane bans. There are medications that are available to stop someone from hemorrhaging. They're no longer allowed to have them in the birth carts. Now they got to run down the hall and unlock them. You know, stuff that like saved my life is no longer like right there in the room with people. So that's kind of like part of what I've been trying to say for a long time now is, you know, people who are so up in arms about abortion and abortion bans and, you know, pro-life, I want you to understand you're actually putting people's lives in jeopardy with these bans. That's what's happening. You're putting, you know, like I don't think I'd be sitting here if I had been in a state like that today. So that's part of why I'm, you know, I'm so impassioned about this topic is it would be really nice if we could just trust women a little bit more, you know. I'll get to that. With my daughter, I had a very different experience. And so here I am, same person, two different pregnancies, totally different. I was sick as a dog, sick as a dog with her for the first trimester, as if, you know, I went out like drinking every night, like on a bender every night, all night for the first 3 months, just sick. I, you know, wake up with like the spins. It went on the entire day. And of course, at that point, I had a toddler and my son, and he was still nursing when I got pregnant with my daughter. And I didn't want to like abruptly wean him. So I'm like nursing my son, pregnant with my daughter. It's an old wives' tale that nursing while pregnant causes miscarriage. What it does is it's a lot of calcium going out. You've got your calcium stores are going to the baby that you're growing and also as you're nursing. So it's your calcium stores. There's an increased risk of osteoporosis for you, the mom, later in life. So that's the thing about it. And also like it's a lot of output for you energy wise. But I didn't want to just like wean him on a dime. So I was nursing my son, pregnant with my daughter, you know, teaching full time, own my own business, and like, you know, trying to deal with the fact that couldn't keep anything down, like couldn't really eat. And I've got a toddler, you know, who I love more than life. And I got to like show up for him and show up for the people in the room who are coming to practice with me and get my writing done some crazy way or another, like after my toddler goes to sleep. And while I'm, you know, I'd have like maybe a couple of hours a day where I felt like, okay. And yeah, I mean, it was not easy. But you don't have, there's no one who's going to say to you, you know what, like, I'll just take care of all of your stuff for you. There isn't. You just have to figure it out, you know? And I did. I did. Like, that's it. You just figure it out. You just feel terrible and you keep doing what you need to do and showing up for the people you need to show up for. And that's it. So that's what happened. When I moved into my second trimester with her, I started to feel better, thankfully. Some women feel sick all the way through. And that's, you know, that is not easy. My childbirth with her, I had one moment of alarms blaring, and I thought, oh my God, this is going to happen again. What is going on? You know, and that with her, I did not have my only birth plan with her. You know, with my son, I had this whole thing written out. It was like 6 pages of, you know, like all of my, and it was a really good in a way, especially for someone who's been practicing yoga for, you know, all these years. It's been 34 years for me, and meditation and all of that. It was good for me to recognize that it's not up to me. You know, my birth plan, that like it's good to have intention, of course. It's good to have a vision of what it is you hope is going to happen. It's good to write that stuff down because I think it helps you kind of like create that vision of what you're hoping for, but also to understand so many things, most things are outside of your control. And when it comes to something like the way your birth is going to go, you know, it's a little bit like trying to make a plan for like the ocean. Hey, ocean, like, here's how your tides are going to go this week. It's like, you know, it's really not up to you. And so it was not good or easy. It was painful and terrifying, but it was like also, I think, a profound, let's say, lesson for me. And it's not up to you. There's a lot of things that are not up to you. And I think sometimes when you've been through a lot of trauma, there is this response of wanting to plan things out, thinking if you do that and you do everything right, then you can avoid being hurt, or the people you love can avoid being hurt. You can keep people out of harm's way. And it just doesn't work like that. Unfortunately, or fortunately, I don't, you know, however you want to think about it, it doesn't work like that. It's not up to you. You don't, no matter what you do, you can do every single thing right. Like I was saying, self-checks and mammograms, and you can still get, you know, it's just, hopefully you're doing everything you can to take care of yourself, take care of the people you love, and then also having a healthy dose of like keeping your hands open, keeping your heart open, keeping your mind open, and understanding like a lot of these things are not in your control, right? So you set yourself up and you set the people up that you love, like in the absolute best way that you can. And then you have to kind of like try to have some faith so you're not in this constant state of fear. Okay. So childbirth, right? With my daughter, I had one moment very early in the experience where the alarm started blaring and like 6 people came running into the room, and they gave me a shot. My like uterus contracted and it wasn't releasing, and so they gave me something to like make that stop, make my uterus stop contracting. And basically my doctor called and she was like, if that happens again, we're just doing a C-section, like right away. We're not doing this again. I was like, okay. Okay. Like, I'm not, you know, that's fine. I'm not putting any of us through this again. Like, okay. And thankfully it didn't happen. You know, I think that it was almost like I had to give up that last bit of resistance or whatever, you know, because I was just like, all right, like whatever needs to happen. And once I got to that full place of surrender, the rest of the birth with her was very smooth and, you know, easy. She's also 2 pounds lighter than my son, so that made it easier too. And a smaller head. But it's not easy is the point. You know, none of this stuff is easy. And then you have these people, right? They're on the outside. And then there's like all of that stuff of like, okay, I'm going home and I've got to keep these tiny people alive, and they literally can't survive. Like, you know, that's up to me to make sure that they're okay, that they're safe, that they're secure, that they're sheltered, that they're fed, that they're warm, that they're comforted, that they're changed. You know, like I'm doing all of those things literally to keep them alive. And then when you get beyond that part, it's like not just keeping them alive, but making sure they're like thriving, right? That they're feeling incredibly loved and secure in all the ways you can create that for them, no matter what is happening in your life. And I did the single mom, you know, it was like really tough. And I was still working and running a business and doing all these things and writing until 2-3 o'clock in the morning. You know, it's like all of that, right? Now, part of the reason so many of these things were on my mind this week is because I don't know if you saw the video of Teresa Barenpole at the Coeur d'Alene town hall in Idaho last weekend. But there was a town hall, and to be clear, right, a town hall is supposed to be an opportunity for people in the community to show up and express themselves. Lawmakers come, legislators come, and they talk about all the different issues. And then the people in the community of whatever, political aisle they're on or what, they get to express themselves. They can express excitement and, they can applaud, they can cheer, or they can express dissent. Those are our First Amendment rights. That's what town halls are supposed to be. So she goes with some friends and she's expressing dissent in a room full of people. And there are people that are also cheering and expressing their happiness, so it's a full, boisterous room full of people. She is a known Democrat in the area, and this is a Republican organized town hall, and the local sheriff is there, a guy named Bob Norris. I'm going to call it out, folks. And the guy who is the MC is a guy named Ed. I want to make sure I'm seeing it. I'm seeing it in my head. Bejarana or Bejanara. Yeah, it's one or the other. And he's a voiceover artist. And he's got like 20 books on Audible that he's narrated. And so he's emceeing the event. And as these legislators are, they're speaking, they're saying different things, Teresa and her friends, when the mic's getting passed from like one legislator who's finished speaking to the next, she's calling out dissent. She's saying, hey, you took timber, you took lumber from a job and used it for your own personal project, or you know what, women are dying. Like, she's calling things out from her chair, and there's video you can see. She did not get. I don't want to skip ahead. At a certain point, the sheriff comes over, and the MC, Ed, our friend Ed, says, hey, pipe down. There'll be time for your questions later. But he's not talking to the people who are cheering and applauding. Those people are fine. It's only the people who are dissenting that are getting any kind of flack or talking to. And then the sheriff comes over and he says, you're leaving, you're out. And she's like, I'm leaving? Why am I leaving? Like, I'm expressing dissent at a town hall. And he says, do you want the pepper spray? You're either out of here or you're going to be arrested. And she's like, I'm going to be arrested at a town hall for expressing my First Amendment rights. And then it gets crazy. There's a security team called Lear Asset Management that had been hired for this event, and they are unidentified. There's nothing on their person, right, to suggest that they're security, which is against the law. You have to have something that says security on you. And the sheriff calls them over, and they essentially assault this woman at the sheriff's behest, while Ed on stage with his mic is like, I'm just going to talk over you. You're saying stupid things. You have nothing. Your stuff, what you have to say right now is not relevant. And Teresa's saying, who are these people? Who are you? Are you deputies of the sheriff? Like, who are you? Please show me your ID. Like, I'm not, And meanwhile, they've got zip ties, and they're literally pulling her out by force, and people around are filming. No one is stopping them. And she is fighting back. She doesn't want to, she's scared. She doesn't want to be pulled out of a town hall by three guys dressed in black who are not identifying themselves. The sheriff is not giving her any assurance that they work for him or with him, which they don't. He's just telling them to go ahead and take her. So that's not okay. And no one should be okay with that. No one should be okay with that, okay? On either side. And this is the part of the equation that I think really needs to, be highlighted is you have to keep asking yourself, if this were flipped, would I be okay with it? If this were flipped, would I be okay with it? If this were a Democrat-led town hall and a Republican woman came and was expressing her dissent and was then, carried out of the room by 3 unidentified men with zip ties, would I be okay? Assuming I'm a Republican, would that be okay with me? And my answer to you is it shouldn't matter. It shouldn't matter. Like, that should never happen in the United States, okay? At a town hall, we should all be able to exercise our First Amendment rights. The end. Teresa did not get loud and disruptive until these men started pulling her out by force. And at one point, one of them said to her, "This is going to be a lot easier if you just comply." And she screamed back, "That's what they say to rape victims." And yes, it is. Just comply. Like, where are we right now? And the fact that no one in this room, some people were applauding. There was a man to her right who, at first, like the sheriff, he told him to get up, and he did. He got up. And then later, as they were dragging her, out, like 3 men, you can imagine, like overpowering this woman, he did try to intervene. And I think he was also taken out in zip ties. I don't know really what to say here, but a whole lot of people should have gotten up and intervened. Like, it doesn't matter who you voted for. No American should be okay with that. Okay? No American should be okay with that. Women should be really scared to see a woman being dragged out of a town hall like that. She wasn't throwing anything. This is a woman who's just sitting in her chair expressing dissent. And because she has a different political ideology than the sheriff and the people who set up the event, she's being carried out like that. That's terrifying. That's some Handmaid's Tale stuff going on there. So that's why all this stuff was on my mind, because we're entering some very scary territory now. And we have been. It's like, not new. That's part of what has been happening over the last 6 weeks is our checks and balances are eroding in front of our eyes, and every American should be alarmed and engaged. Doesn't matter what political party you're affiliated with, you should be an American first and foremost, right? And like dedicated and loyal to the Constitution and democracy. Like, if you're a patriot and you believe in this country, even if you think that, as I do, right, we've never been who we say we are, that the Declaration of Independence is kind of like America's Tinder profile, and that we really have always, there's this work that has always needed to be done to be working toward a more perfect union and to bring everybody into that all men are created equal, when that was written by white men and they were talking about white men. We still can't get the ERA ratified, and it's 2025. There's still a pay gap between men and women, between white women and black women. I mean, we're nowhere near where we need to be, but I still believe in the Constitution, and I still don't want to give up on democracy and America. It hasn't been, there's systemic problems here, and there have been from the beginning, but at least there's a framework to keep fighting and working towards something better. There isn't if it goes away. There isn't. If we're going to get to this point where it doesn't matter what Congress says, and it doesn't matter what the Constitution says, and it doesn't matter what the Supreme Court says, you're not going to like what happens. You're not going to like what happens. It's not going to be pretty. And you might think you're safe. You're not safe. Nobody's safe. The only people who are safe are the billionaires. That's who's safe. So if you're a billionaire, you're probably okay. Other than that, you're not okay. You're not safe. Whole bunch of like government people, federal employees just fired like at will, agencies slashed. You have an unelected billionaire. I've had people tell me he is the smartest man alive and he's just doing this out of the goodness of his heart. He just gave himself a $2 billion contract with the FAA, right? Got rid of Verizon and gave himself the contract. SpaceX has it now. You think he's doing these things out of the goodness of his heart? Wake up. He is making the dollars. That is what is going on. These men that are in power now, they're not there to serve. They're there to take. And I know it's, for some people, this is like they're just not wrapping their heads around it. And it's dizzying for, those of us who are like watching this go down. And then there are people who are like, it's great. He's just finding waste and fraud. I'm sorry to tell you, this is not what you do if you're looking for waste and fraud. Okay? This is not it. You don't start awarding yourself government contracts and violating the Constitution and canceling Ebola, like all of the things that we have in place to make sure Ebola doesn't spread. And oh gosh, we just had the first death from measles in this country last week, and that's spreading. And I mean, this is not what you do when you're trying to cut waste and fraud. This is not it. This is what you do when you're trying to, give billionaires more money. You tell everyone that, oh, hey, we're just letting, Elon Musk in the treasury with a bunch of dudes, 6 kids with flash drives to clean things up. And then you just start shutting things down and firing people. And by the way, they're the people like the whole global outreach and funding that they've cut is less than 1% of our entire budget. That's not what you do when you're trying to cut waste. Our national parks, all these park rangers, 1,000 people just like fired. People that were managing our nuclear warheads, fired. Like, there's these kids that are in there, they're writing code and basically doing things like, okay, cancel any programs that have the word transition in them because of gender affirming care, right? They don't want anything, and they don't want to support that anymore. Well, the word transition applies to more things than just that one thing. It applies, for example, to things like kids with special needs who might need help transitioning from high school to college. Gone. This is not it. This is a bunch of, we've never seen this before. This is a bunch of billionaires who have come in and are getting all these, the budget that was just voted on this past week will, no matter what they want to tell you, gut Medicaid and forget about SNAP benefits. Veterans benefits are at risk. Social Security's at risk. The Affordable Care Act is going to be impacted in ways you can. If you're worried about being able to afford health care, go to the doctor, help your parents get into assisted living when they need it, you got to be paying attention because these people don't care about any of that. Any of that. They're not worrying about you. They're worrying about them. But women is what I was really looking at this week. And because of the mammogram and because of Teresa Barronpole being dragged out and because of Governor Janet Mills, it's another thing that happened last week. And there's so many things that are happening all the time. It's, I think for all of us, there's this play. It's like, it's very hard to exist in this country right now, because there are a lot of people who are walking around like everything's fine, which is one of the most bone-chilling things out there right now. It's really dizzying to have people who are like not just still with this administration, but like obnoxiously with them, with like the laughing, crying emojis. And you're like, I don't think you're going to be laughing and crying. I don't think that's the emoji you're going to be using in a couple of months when you start to understand how badly it's going to impact everyone. It's not just going to impact, some of us. It's going to be impacting everyone. The SAVE Act, this whole, I don't know if you're paying attention to it, but I sure hope you are, because they're trying to make it harder for women to vote. And that is also part of what was on my mind this week, is now it's like if you have to renew your registration, for example, forget the real ID, which they're telling everybody for the last few years, you need a real ID. Soon, if you want to go anywhere or do anything, you need this real ID, right? Now that won't be good enough. If you have a real ID and you want to renew your registration to vote, you can't use that. You can use a passport or you can use your original birth certificate. Well, I don't know if you have your original birth certificate, but if you do, and your current other identification, let's say you don't have a passport, but you have a driver's license, if your driver's license does not match your original birth certificate, let's say you have a different last name, that won't work for you. You won't be able to renew. Who does that impact? Women who get married and change their last names. And that's a lot of women. So not everyone has a passport, in this country, because not everybody has the expendable income to be traveling internationally, and passports are not free. They're expensive, and they're time consuming. And if you don't have the expendable income to be traveling internationally, then why would you go and get a passport? So this is where we are now. They're like actively trying to make it, and forget about mail-in, that they don't want that anymore. People who live overseas, they want to try to make you have to register in person. There's a lot of really scary stuff going on. And it isn't, as I've been talking about, a lot of people have been talking about the way that media is now. You've got billionaires owning these newspapers, owning social media sites. Like the way information is being presented to people. A lot of people aren't even aware these things are happening, or they're aware they're happening, but they're being presented in this like very lovely light, oh, we're just trying to make sure there's no like, voter registration fraud. It's in our country, voter fraud is it's a non-issue. It is something that so rarely happens. And when it does, people are caught. It is not an issue. This whole thing of like dead people getting Social Security, not an issue. Not an issue that's like they're not catching and fixing, quickly. And I was talking about that. I mean, I've lost both my parents in the last few years. And in both cases, let me just tell you, they know to the dime, they know to the day. The minute the death certificate is registered, if they have sent that Social Security payment, like let's say they sent it on the 1st or the 2nd, and your parent dies on the 7th, they're going to come back and take out the excess Social Security for the month that your parent was given. And twice. I didn't do anything. I didn't have to do anything. It's automatic. This is not a thing. So a lot of the stuff that's being reported is just bogus, but we have a president who is now president for the second time, who spent a lot of time the first time he was president making everyone doubt newspapers and journalists with fake news and alternate facts. Okay, facts are facts. There's no alternate. It's just they're facts, right? But we lost that. So, and that's one of the first things you undermine if you're trying to, overthrow a government is you get rid of people's trust in journalists. You get rid of people's ability to discern what's true and what's not true. And that has been done very well here. And it has been really helped by social media. And that's not just here, that's everywhere. You know, we have these information bubbles and people exist in the bubble and they don't go outside their bubbles. So there are a lot of people here who think what's happening right now, I think it's great. It's terrific. And you see them. Sometimes you see these comments like there's, an economic blackout going on today. And then you see people like, I'm going to buy double today. It's like, okay, have fun with that. I'm glad that you think it's terrific for these people to come in and break laws and violate the Constitution and reward billionaires. I hope that works out really well for you and drag women out of town halls. Like, good luck. Because you are like letting grifters, conduct the biggest con of the century in real time. And I don't know, you're applauding it while it's happening. Ugh, it's mind-boggling. But I was focusing on women this week because of, and usually when I'm writing, I'm always kind of like connecting the dots between like what's happening for me personally or what's happening to friends of mine, and then what's happening like microcosm, macrocosm. I'm always fascinated by that stuff, and I always have been. And so because I had this like mammogram that was it was on the very, very high end of uncomfortable. It just got my wheels spinning about how hard it is to just exist in a body that, that does all these things or can do all these things. And again, all the respect in the world for women who decide like having babies is not for me. My heart goes out to women who desperately want to have babies and can't. I lived that it was a year and a half. It's just very painful. I was one of the lucky ones who managed to do that, but it's like, it's so painful. Women who have had babies and lost them, and having to like continue on carrying that loss in your heart, which never goes away, not for 1 minute of one day. Queer women, Black women, brown women, Indigenous women, trans women, like it is hard, okay, to exist in this world and deal with men who think you don't deserve the same rights that they have. Men who grab you in stairwells when you're 13 years old and rub their hard-ons, against your ass with their hand over your mouth and tell you not to move, like me. Men who overpower you when you're 16 and don't take no for an answer, like me. I'm trying really hard not to curse right now. It is hard. And I think most of us have had it, and a little respect would be nice. It would be nice. And I just can't really put into words anymore how infuriating it is for men like Ed on a stage with a mic to be talking to a PhD, by the way, Teresa Barenpole, calling her a little girl who is afraid to pay for the consequences of what she did. That's what he was saying to the audience as 3 men, unidentified men, are assaulting her and trying to get her in zip ties because the sheriff told them to. That's what Ed is doing, okay? Ed, whose mother at some point pushed him out of her vagina. I would like to smack Ed in the head is what I would like to do, okay? I actually wrote Ed an email because his website is public, so I went ahead and did that. Ed took his Instagram down because Ed's not such a big man. When the video of him belittling a woman like that goes viral, and then a whole bunch of women on Instagram come racing to her defense, Ed's not such a big man anymore. Ed deletes his Instagram, but his his website is public. I sent him an email. I also called Audible and let them know that this is a man who is demeaning and silencing a woman in public. So we can only imagine what he's doing in private. And that is not someone whose voice I would want to hear in any book that's being narrated that I'm going to listen to. Not that I'm listening to Audible anymore because Amazon, But it's worth it, I think, making these calls. I called the sheriff's office. It's not easy. They don't make it easy to register a complaint. This is the office where this man works. So, of course, they don't want to hear it, but I did. It's Kootenai County Sheriff's Office, if you feel like figuring that out. I think it's worthwhile. I also called the county commissioner's office. I also called the governor's office, Brad Little, because we need to do something, right? You see a woman being dragged out of a town hall. We need to speak up and do something and try. This is still America for now. So, I'm doing everything that I can do as one person. I'm calling my senators. I'm calling my representatives. I hope you are too. 5calls.org. I hope you're using that. It's a really good resource. I'm certainly using every platform I have to try to talk about these things. And I'm losing people, and that's fine. It's okay. Because what I need at the end of the day is to be able to look my children in the eye. That's what I need. I need to know that in this moment in time, like someday, if I'm lucky enough to have grandkids and they ask me, what did you do as democracy was on fire and failing? What did you do? I want to be able to say I did everything I possibly could. I did everything I possibly could to try to stop it from happening. I used my voice. I spoke up. I showed up. I tried. Even if it doesn't go the way that I hope it does. I did I did everything in my power. Last night I went to Trader Joe's and I have a neighbor who is having a hard time. And so I had his list and then I had my own list and I went in there and I actually had he gave me his receipt from last time he was there, and it was not easy to use the receipt to try to figure out what he wanted because things are marked in these different, unless you work there, you don't know necessarily what the shortened version of something is. So thankfully there was someone there who was very happy to help me go around. And so I got his stuff done. And then I got, the stuff from my list done. And I got to the front and, there's this kid there and just a really nice, just a really, really nice kid. And he was asking me like, how are you? Like, how was your day? And, it's just, how are any of our days right now? Really, it was good. How was your day? How you doing? You're like exchanging the way that you do, but like with genuine like eye contact and stuff. It's just a very nice, like he reminded me of my son. He's a couple years older than my son, a few years older than my son. And then I said something to him, like, I said something about just like, it's really strange right now in the world. And he said, oh, it really is. It has been for a while, And I said, are you in school? Are you out of school? And he said, no, I graduated a couple years ago. And he said, I made it out just like right as COVID was happening. And, and he said, it's just, yeah, it's a really strange time. And, it's like hard to get a job. And I mean, I might like start crying now. I felt so embarrassed, and ashamed to be part of a generation that is handing these kids off a world like this, that these are the choices and decisions we have made collectively. I know I didn't, but it's just like hard to even look these kids in the eye. That is how embarrassed and ashamed I feel for what they are dealing with and what they're looking at. Can you imagine looking around as a 20-something right now and thinking to yourself, this is who people elected? This is the leadership. people decided to put in office men who think women don't deserve to vote. They want to make it as hard as possible for women to vote. They want to deport people who've been living in this country for 30 years if they're undocumented, but they've been paying their taxes and working hard. It's not about, all these things that he was, it's the criminals. It's a BS, okay? He's talking about people who have been living here, working hard, having families. He wants to get rid of birthright citizenship. Who is this person? Who is this person? But immigrants from, South Africa who are billionaires, they're okay. They can break laws. That's fine, But people who don't break laws, who work their asses off for 30 years and pay taxes, which, again, his friend has all the loopholes, right? Those are the ones that get to be deported. And now he wants to have a gold card citizenship for $5 million. Do you know how embarrassing that is? Like, that is embarrassing. It's a QVC is what it is. It's a grifter. That's who we have in the Oval Office, a grifter con man and his billionaire sidekick who wants to go to Mars and pollute the skies. And people think he's some philanthropic genius. Give me a break. Give me a break. You got to wake up, folks. You got to wake up, because I'm going to tell you, if you don't wake up soon, we're not going to have a democracy. It's going to be done, and it's going to be too late. And, I don't know. I don't know what else anyone can say at this point. It's like a lot of people, they have their one issue that they care about. It's the only issue they care about. Well, okay, but you're giving up like a huge, huge thing for your one issue. And I would argue that it's not a good trade. It's not a good trade. And so, women, I wrote this thing and I was talking about, and this is the last thing I'll say before I wrap it up. But the reason that I called the essay Hooters and Balls is because I was talking about Janet Mills, and that's what I was going to wrap it up with. So the governor of Maine, Janet Mills, she goes to the governor's luncheon, and president gets up. And I mean, it's like, it's nonstop. As I was saying, we're all, I think, inundated with this stuff, and you do need to be able to step away. And, please also know that I sometimes, when I'm writing, like, that's really where I am processing all of my outrage, my heartbreak. The rage that I'm feeling is coming out of my absolute and utter despair for my own children, for everyone's children, for women in this country, whether they voted for this crap or not. I am in despair, for my Black, brown, Indigenous friends, my queer friends, my transgender friends, my friends with transgender children. Like, that is where my rage is coming from, for girls and women who are dying because of these abortion bans, even the ones who would like to have babies and now don't have good maternal, prenatal, and, childbirth and postnatal care. Like, I am beside myself. So sometimes that's what's coming across, like gallows humor or snark or sarcasm or seething. Like, that is keeping me alive because I just am beside myself. Sometimes I am on my couch just crying, If you saw me in person and we actually had a conversation, I probably, you probably find that I'm in a lot more despair than rage, It's like, but rage is good fuel, it's good if you can, like, alchemize it and use it productively. Gotta make sure you're taking care of your nervous system, because it's a lot for all of us. It's a lot right now. To not be engaged, that is not a spiritual practice. That is, I don't even know what to call that. Like, really, if you are just like, la, 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 time to go to my yoga class and have a matcha, you're like don't just miss me. Like, I can't. I'm sorry. I don't have time for that. That's not it. That's not what a spiritual practice is. It's not disengaging and being non-attached. And I'm just going to go meditate now. And too bad if like lots of people are dying and suffering and, our democracy's being gutted and women are it's going to be Gilead here. Oops. Like, okay, just please miss me. But that's what happened. So Janet Mills. So she goes to the governor's luncheon, and the president's up there, and he is giving his speech, and he's talking about his executive orders, and he gets to the one about how no more DEI, which I think I've covered this so many times, but let's just be real clear one last time. DEI has been impacting white women more than anyone else. And I'm not putting that in my column of good things. I'm just making sure you understand that the demographic that has benefited the most from DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion practices are white women, okay? Also, just to make it real, just to be clear, we're talking about, Black, brown, indigenous people. We're talking about queer people. We're talking about people who are differently abled, uniquely abled people. We're talking about veterans. And what we are not talking about is putting unqualified people in positions that they don't belong in. We're talking about broadening the net so that when a job becomes available, more people get to apply. That's what we're talking about. Just to be super clear. But this man that, a lot of people decided to elect, this man who was talking on the campaign trail about how people in Springfield, Ohio, legal Haitian immigrants in Springfield, Ohio, were eating cats and dogs. Okay? Please explain to me how any human being votes for a man who's saying that. But whatever. And his sidekick who's talking about how childless cat women are what's wrong with this country. He gets up there and he says, he gets to his executive order about no more DEI. We're not going to do that anymore. And he says, I hear that the governor of Maine is not listening to me. I have said we're not doing that anymore. That means we're not going to have any transgender kids. We're not having any of that on sports teams at schools. We're not doing any of that. And he said, I hear she's not listening to me. Or is she here? Is she here? So he calls her out in front of the whole room of governors. And she says, I am here. And he says, I hear you're not going to comply. You better comply. And she says, I'm listening. I'm complying with state laws. Okay, state laws, just in case, you need a little refresher, they supersede any executive order. This is not a situation here where we get a new president and he comes into the Oval Office and he just says, here, I'm going to write something down and I'm going to sign it and this is what we're doing now. That's not how it works, okay? Congress, according to the Constitution, if we're still going to listen to the Constitution, Congress, oh God, I feel like my brain's going to explode. Okay. All the states contribute federal taxes, right? And where do they come from? Hi, us, the taxpayers, right? We pay our taxes. I just met with my accountant. We pay our state taxes and we pay our federal taxes and we send off our taxes. So that money comes in and Congress, which is made up of people that we, the American people, we send those people, we elect them and they go to Washington and they're supposed to represent us in our states. They're supposed to go there and say what's good I live in California. What's good for my constituents in the state of California? What do they want me to do? What are the issues that are important to them? What am I supposed to do while I'm here? I work for them. They're my boss, right? And so they fight for us. They say, hey, our federal funds that we contributed, and by the way, California contributes a lot of federal funds. This is what we need. We need some new roads, or we need some help because we just had these crazy mega wildfires because of climate change. That's what we need. And then Congress, which is all these people that we've elected, and we have senators, we have Congress people, we have representatives, and it depends on the size of your state. So there's a lot of stuff to learn. they get in there and they like argue and they talk and they work amongst themselves, and there's some back scratching. Hey, I'll do this for you, you do this for me, whatever. And that's what happens. We're sending those people in there to get the job done for us. And if they don't get the job done, we vote them out. Well, we don't do that if we're not paying attention and we're not engaged. But anyway, that's how it's supposed to work. So she says to him, so Congress decides, okay, yes, we're going to approve this amount of money for this fund, for this project. We're signing off on that, and we're going to have that check written to the state of California for this. We're going to have that check written to the state of Maine for that. We're going to, that's what we're doing. Congress controls the purse strings according to the Constitution, not the president, Congress. Okay? Because Congress is representing the American people, but also specifically it helps. It makes it easier for each state to get what they need because they've got these representatives going to Washington saying, hey, you know what? I'm from there. I know what's happening there. I know what my people need. I know it's important to them. So this is what I need to be fighting for. Okay. So she's there at this luncheon, and he says, I hear you're not going to comply with my executive order. And she says, well, I'm complying with the laws of the state, And he says, no, you got to comply. You don't comply with what I want, you're not going to get your federal funds. Okay. Do you understand? He's trying to hold federal funds to the state of Maine hostage if she doesn't do what he wants. And she said, we'll see you in court. I love this woman. That's the right idea. Every single governor in that room should have been backing her up. She doesn't need it. She's tough as nails. It's not the first time she's gone head to head with this man. She did it last time around too. But every single governor should have realized if he's threatening her, it's only a matter of time before he threatens me and my state. The president is not the be all end all. That's not how it works. It wouldn't be right. Imagine what would happen then next time we had a Democrat who's president. If it worked the way this man wants it to work, then let's say Kamala Harris won. She's there and she's like this man, okay? And Greg Abbott's in the room and there's some big emergency happening in Texas, and she says, "Hey, where's Greg Abbott? Where's he? Is he here?" And he says, "Yeah, I'm here." She says, "Listen, you're going to stop with those abortion bans right now if you want your federal funds for your emergency." That's what would be happening, folks. It doesn't get to work like that, according to the Constitution of the United States of America. And if you don't like it in reverse, you shouldn't like what's happening right now. I don't know what to tell you. So you're a hypocrite if you do. And you're un-American and unpatriotic. And you're willing to let democracy burn. And have, a situation like with a dictator, and he doesn't care about you. So I don't know what to tell you. And the people around him don't care about you. They just bullied President Zelensky in the Oval Office. I am not even going to talk about it right now because I'm sick to my stomach. That's what just happened. They just bullied an ally in the Oval Office on live television. Okay. So Janet Mills. So I posted a note on Substack. I said, something about here he is pretending that he's trying to, quote, protect women, because of course this is all about protecting women on sports teams or in like locker rooms from trans women, right? That's what he's trying to pretend this is about. Here he is pretending to protect women and threatening a woman in real time when she says she's not complying. It's never about protecting women with these men. It's about controlling them. Okay. So like thousands of people liked it, commented, all these people like loving Governor Janet Mills in the great state of Maine. And then this one white woman comes to play. And I know because I clicked on her profile and took a look because I could not believe what she was saying. And she said, this was her hot take, He spoke to her the way he would have spoken to anyone else in the room. And isn't that what we wanted? Equality? And no. First of all, and then she went on to say, she shouldn't have confronted him in a room full of people. It's like confronting your boss at an all you can eat. Okay. So like 9 million things here. Okay. One of them is, that's not, equality. If your idea of equality is that everyone's going to be equally abused by a malignant narcissist, I do not call that winning. She did not confront him. He stopped in the middle of a speech he was giving and called her out in a room full of people. He made it public like that because I think he thought she was going to be intimidated and she wasn't. And she was not rude. He was. He threw a temper tantrum and was snarky and rude and obnoxious. And she was just calm and pretty legendary. So, but the fact that this woman, this white woman, wants to come and play, and talk to me about, it's like, I'm not playing like that right now. Okay. I want to say to you, if you think that you are safe because you're a white woman who voted for this, I want you to understand something. You're not safe. None of us are safe. Okay? None of us are safe. When democracy goes down the drain, none of us are safe. These people are going to do whatever they want, anytime they want to do it, and the only people they care about are the billionaires. You better get the message. I mean, I really don't know what to tell you, but you're not safe. They don't care about you. And I hope you don't have to find out the hard way. But I'm not playing. I'm not playing those games with, the Serenas. I'm not doing that. And I'm not going to pretend, we went back and forth a little bit and she finally, she gave up. It's just like, this is not where we are right now. What's sad about it is that even if you are a woman who voted for this, anything and everything that I'm doing to try to fight for our rights to just have some respect, I'm also doing for you by default, And I'm not expecting a thank you. I'm certainly not waiting for one. I'm not confused. I know that you're you're out there buying double today or whatever it is that you're doing. But I'm just letting you know, I think you really need to rethink where you're coming from. I mean, these guys do not have your back. These are the guys that are going to pull you out of rooms in zip ties. And they're not going to think twice about it. They're going to listen to the big man in charge with his balls, okay? But these guys, balls, and that's why I named the essay what I did, is they're super sensitive. You're going to be real careful. And I'm sorry, compared to all the stuff that women are going through, you want to talk about strength? Don't talk to me about having balls, okay? Because the stuff that we're going through all the time, that's, that takes serious, what I said is go get a cantaloupe and peel it and go ahead and take 36 hours to slowly put it up your back passage, and then talk to me about strength. Until then, don't talk to me about that, Anyway, I'm sending love to all y'all, if you're struggling right now, if you're just feeling beside yourself, if you're feeling despair, if you're feeling outrage, if you're feeling, just shock about what's happening, or if you have moments in the day where you're just sitting and staring into space, I feel you, you're not alone. I am doing more and more of my stuff on Substack because I really don't know what's going to happen on these other platforms. I'm not feeling particularly comfortable. So please, if this is stuff that you want to be talking about, thinking about, engaging with, please make sure that you come and subscribe over there. Starting to have some kind of strange things happening on some of the other platforms, the meta platforms. So, yeah, just wanted to mention that. And I'm sending you a lot of love. Till next time, hang in there. All right.